All right. So welcome to podcast number two of the movement to become a carbon ninja. I'm here with Donna, who's part of the our Puma group in the Alt MBA program. And our mission for this weekend was to create and promote a movement for people to sort of cut their ties to carbon producing transportation. Previously, we interviewed Lee, a dentist who commutes to the Soho area of New York, and his commitment was to eliminate the need for a car completely. And in doing so, he actually committed to doing that by cutting his driver's license up. And we think that that's a movement. Things like that similar are going to occur, and that's what we're trying to fuel and promote. With the whole notion of carbon, as we're seeing it, we think that people can choose to make a couple of commitments, not change their entire lives, but make deep decisions, and only a couple. And if everyone starts to do the same thing, what a great impact this will see in our world. So today, with this podcast, we're going to be talking to Donna and how she chose to start off by not telecommuting. And it's fascinating. Being able to work from a location you choose, effectively conduct your business, and not even have to use a car or public transportation, if you will, and take pressure off of that. And if people were to start doing this more and more, it'd be interesting to see if they were able to actually reduce the amount of buses and trains that are on the road. So Donna, you've been in this space of public relations. You started the whole notion of telecommuting, what you'd say about 15 years now?
Yes, when I was still in my regular job, I started telecommuting 15 years ago after I had my son, and I realized that working, I don't know, maybe 60 or 70 hours a week in a law firm with a newborn baby wasn't really going to work for the long term. So I convinced them to let me work from home and kind of leveraged the work that I had, so it made sense. We had offices all over the world, so I was able to take a training program that I was traveling all over the world to do. So getting on a plane and staying in hotels and taking taxis and all of those things, I was able to turn that into a virtual training environment where we were now training people from all over the world from my home office in Westchester, New York.
Well, let's drill down into that. So, automatically, I heard planes, I've heard cars, it's probably trains involved in that too.
Yeah.
All the various modes of transportation that you had to be a part of to get to your place of work. So 15 years ago, I would imagine that the technology wasn't as robust as it is today.
No, not at all. It was very new.
Yeah, and certainly the cultural acceptance of
Yeah.
telecommuting
No,
was
I had to lie. I had to lie. I mean, I convinced them. It was a financial decision that ultimately convinced them that this was an idea worth exploring. But I couldn't be honest about what I was doing because then everybody else was going to want to work from home. So, we just kept that a little quiet. Donna just traveled a lot.
So I guess you were able to justify that telecommuting was a more cost-effective way of doing business.
Yes.
But you had to somehow keep it completely under the radar so that the dominoes didn't fall when everyone else realized they could possibly do the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's fascinating. And you were able to do that because of the cost justification. That's what it was.
Every time they would send me on a trip, I would typically be gone between 1 and 2 weeks, and my average trip averaged $30,000.
Wow, that's expensive.
And the Citrix account that we had was $200 a month.
It'd be a fascinating thing to try and recreate the carbon footprint that was left behind with every trip you'd taken. Be fascinating.
Well, it was a lot because there were cabs and there were cars and trains and sometimes buses and planes and you know carrying baggage from place to place and time. It was a lot of time. So when I would get back to the office, there was I wouldn't leave. I would be there for working around the clock to catch up because nobody was doing my work while I was gone. Um,
Right.
so there were so many different wasteful factors involved. At the time, we weren't thinking of it as a carbon footprint factor, but it really is a tremendous change because I wasn't the only person doing this. I mean, ultimately, we changed this on a firm-wide basis. The firm had about 5,000 employees with 18 offices all over the world. So there was a lot of this going on.
Hmm.
And I sparked all of that change.
No, good for you. So fast forward a little bit. You were there at a law firm, and then 12 years ago, you started your firm, Social Pivot, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a PR company. So tell us about what that was like. Now you're independent. You're meeting with clients, and now you're trying to do that via telecommuting, or were you actually on the road trying to meet them?
Well, the experience that I had in my job was what inspired me to start my own business because I started to think, well, if they need this, there's got to be smaller businesses that need this type of assistance as well. And when I first started my business, I wasn't quite sure what to do because not very many people were doing this 12 years ago.
Right.
Um, so, I just tried out all the different tools. I kind of connected with small businesses to see what kind of services they need. And I started using Zoom was not a tool at the time, but I worked on Skype. I worked on WebEx, different virtual, different virtual spaces. There were also forums where you would go, and there was AOL chat was something that we used for business at the time. So
Hmm.
as the technology grew and increased and became easier to use, I always kept my vision on what was next and what was what was more cost effective, time effective, what was going to be able to help me do the most with the least. And part of what I've done throughout the years is I've passed this along. Whenever I do trainings, I've done a lot of trainings with small entrepreneur groups where people are just starting businesses. And in
Hmm.
addition to teaching them what I do, I teach them how I do it. Because when you can leverage all of these tools, you can create a really wonderful client experience without actually being in the room. And when you can look face to face and you can have a conversation like this, it's not that far off from being there in real life. And it's been incredibly beneficial for my business, for relationships. You can record, which is nice because I do a lot of training. So what we do is we provide the recordings to clients, and they use them as part of their operating procedures. So we're all about empowering our clients and teaching them how to do this work. So now they can put this as part of their hiring process. So when they hire somebody and bring somebody on board, they can have all of these assets to help them learn the tools and the strategies that they're going to have to work with day in and day out.
So you're teaching people how to be comfortable through a portal, conduct business through a portal. There has been, like you said, many technologies that have been there in the past. But I'd say, was it 2 years ago that you decided to sort of use Zoom
Mm-hmm.
as your platform of choice?
Yes.
And what is it about Zoom that's just that much better than everything else?
It's really easy to use. There's, when you're inviting somebody to come to meet you in a virtual space, particularly when they're not used to working this way, if there's any kind of technical learning curve or, just little tweaks, it works, but you have to do this and you have to do that, that instantly takes the comfort level away and you have to start over again from the beginning. But if
Right.
it's just click this link and meet me here, and then they just see you and they can start talking, it's seamless. They trust it, they can see you, they can talk to you, and the technology is not holding back the trust, which is a big benefit. And it's really cost effective. I mean, there's a free version, but the paid version is $15 a month. And on a typical work day, I'm on Zoom 2, 3, 4 hours a day working with clients.
What's the difference between the paid version and the free version?
Mostly how long you can record and, setting up custom links and, with the paid version, I have like dedicated links for each client. So, what part of our onboarding process when we start to work with a new client is we send them a custom Zoom link that has their name in it. So, there's that little added value there too. And we tell them, this is your Zoom link. Anytime you want to, you want to, have a conversation with us, this is the link that we're going to use. So, we never have to say, use this link or that link. They have their own dedicated link. They feel special. And I would say out of all of the clients that we've introduced to using Zoom, every single one of them has gotten their own account.
So that's a good point. Why don't, if you had to guess over all the years that you've been doing this, how many individuals, let's not talk companies, let's try and guess individuals, would you say you've been able to convince or give the confidence that they could now telecommute instead of getting on a bus or getting in their car? If you had to guess, how many people?
Oh, so many. I'm the first person to encourage somebody to start a business. um, it really, I mean, it just works. I don't have a number because I can't even imagine how many people I've spoken to over a virtual platform over the last 12 years. But I mean, it works. And when you can exhibit to people how you can take different platforms, use them for different applications, it seems easy and they want to do it too. And, I know people that don't even have their own businesses. I have a friend who uses this to communicate with her kids. She has conference calls with her kids.
Are they in the upstairs bedroom?
Sometimes. And I was speaking to a colleague in Panama last week.
Yeah.
And he was saying, and we were talking about a totally unrelated issue, but he was like, I just wish more people would use Zoom. We would save so much time if we didn't have to run out and meet somebody for coffee. And we sat for about 10 minutes and we brainstormed all of these different ways that he can get his colleagues, his clients to start to meet this way. And he was really excited about it. He actually signed up for an account while we were still online.
Excellent. So there is the notion then that you can really you can commit to not having to leave the house with this technology and rely on bus, train, car, plane. So if we even have to call it 5,000 people that you've influenced, that's 5,000 people that may not be taking that trip, and potentially 5,000 people that are telling two friends about not having to drive or use transportation to get to that meeting. And if you translate that now into carbon and being a carbon ninja, when you look at exponentially this process that you're fueling, if you will, you're not just a carbon ninja, you're like a master ninja.
I'm a carbon evangelist.
There you go.
Yeah, and it doesn't really matter what kind of business you have because it's about the connection.
You find you get that connection?
Yeah.
On Zoom?
Absolutely.
With not having to be, because people will talk about the importance of a true face-to-face, right? Can you achieve that? Because really what it boils down to is people have this interpretation of needing a face-to-face, but at what cost?
Well, our faces are face-to-face right now.
Right?
How do you feel? I mean, I'm used to doing this. I do this every day, but you don't, right? How do you feel?
I don't do this every day. No, I don't.
But do you feel like, connected?
Absolutely. I could tell you very much so.
Mm-hmm.
That I feel like I've gotten to know you in so many ways, personality, all sorts of different things come through in this type of a meeting from a personal perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And, having to get into a car and go to a meeting and there's so much that comes with leaving the house.
Yeah. Well,
Not
that's
that
what
you can become hermits, but
yeah.
if you can cut your travel out of the house 3-4 times a week, that's significant when you look at it on scale.
Hmm.
When it's a million people and they're on the road 30% less, that's 333,000 trips that aren't being taken.
I'm going to talk about a different kind of footprint that commuting puts into the world.
Sure.
I commuted for 25 years before I started my own business. And I'm not easy commute, New York City commute.
Mhm.
I commuted within the city, I commuted from the suburbs, and there is no good commute in New York City. It is all awful. And it's time you don't get back. People are grouchy. They're in a bad mood. That heaviness you put out into the world. I would come home from work and I would be miserable for 2 hours. Like it was every single day I had to kind of detox from just getting back and forth to work. And having that kind of footprint in the world isn't good either.
So with that, what's your commitment? What declaration are you going to make now that you're officially declaring yourself as a carbon ninja?
Okay, well, I made this commitment a long time ago, so this one is a bit symbolic.
Okay.
But while I was thinking of that, I was looking for a Metro card, which is the card that you use to get on and off the subway bus system in New York City. And I am proud to say I didn't even have one in my house, which is unheard of because I had them attached to me at all times. But what I did have was the train schedule for the commuter train that goes into New York City, which I very rarely take because it's $25 round trip, which is a lot of money. And, there's things like derailments and getting stuck and trees falling down. These are all things that impact your day. So what I'm going to do for all the people that are still commuting is I'm going to take my very shiny ceremonial scissors and I'm going to cut this bad boy in half.
Excellent. So you're committing to have as many meetings as you possibly can
Yes.
via Zoom, which
Mhm.
you've chosen to do already, but
Yes.
now you've done the ceremonial cutting of the transportation link that you had.
Yes.
And in a previous podcast, I told Lee that I would pull out my driver's license
Mm-hmm.
and make the same sort of cut.
Mm-hmm.
So there's my cut. There's my commitment to being a carbon ninja, if you
Mm-hmm.
will.
And let's
So
high five.
high five.
High five.
Well, Donna, thank you for the time in the podcast today. I think that was a great interview, and hopefully this gets shared around the world,
Yes.
and people can learn to trust in a whole new way of commuting to work, and that's telecommuting and all the benefits that it leaves.
Yeah. And the wonderful thing is when you meet people virtually, you don't have any borders. Terry's
That's right.
in Canada, I'm in New York. And here
Awesome.
we are.
Thank you, Donna.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.